I'm Steve.
And I'm Tracy.
And we are
The Partners at War.
We're filming this the exact same way as we're doing episode 2. This is episode 3 of our series on Army overviews, and today we're going to be covering death. But I do want to say that our first video on this, thank you everybody for the views, and especially thank you for the likes.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. We're not monetizing, so we haven't been on every video, the like, subscribe thing that everybody else does on the videos. But I will let you know that the subscriptions, the likes, those really help motivate us to keep doing it, because we know that people are watching and they're enjoying what we're showing. Once again, we're doing this to try to build the community, not for money.
Right.
So we would appreciate likes, subscribes, if possible. Quick overview that this is...
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. We'll try to make this one as brief as possible. If you've seen the previous 2 videos, you know this is a series of us just covering the different factions and trying to help new players decide which army they might want to play.
And this is all based on our opinion and our experience on the tabletop. So some people may agree or disagree with some of our views. Again, just our viewpoint, trying to help for those people who say, hey, I'm new to AOS. Which army should I start with? And
we'd love to have comments in the commentary section. We definitely have for the first video, and gotten into some good conversations about what your thoughts about it are. And we were very pleasantly surprised with the positive feedback we got from people about the video series.
Right.
So we're going to at least finish the 4 episodes and get all 4 factions done.
I wouldn't mind hearing from people, how did you pick your first army? How did you decide what you were going to jump into? What was that one factor that made you go with this one over that one? I'd love to know.
We don't talk that much about lore or looks.
Right.
Because looks you can go online and see. We'll talk a little bit about it. And lore, we're just not into the lore that much of the game. So it's not the reason why we've picked armies, unless something specifically did have a factor, then we'll talk about it.
Right. One or two little stories about it, but it wasn't our deciding factor.
No. With that, let's go to our first army. Flesh Eater Court. Flesh Eater Courts. Part of me right now wishes we would have started out the entire series with this and started with Flesh Eater Courts.
Why?
And the reason why is because it highlights something so important for new players. And that is, people have lore, they have looks, they have all these different reasons they're attracted to armies. And then, in my opinion, if you're going to play an army over and over and over again, you have to have a play style that matches how you want to play.
And I think I learned that.
Tracy's now a Flesh Eater Court player.
This is my go-to army. I'm really trying to master them. And at first, I wasn't interested in them at all.
At all. I was going to play them.
Yeah.
And then I played them a couple times, and Tracy was playing some other armies that she wasn't doing too well with.
Well, I started with Seraphim.
And then you went to Daughters of Cain.
Daughters of Cain.
Gloomspite. Gloomspite with Troggoths and Squigs and everything else.
Yep.
And a lot of that was based around looks.
Right. I wanted to play an army that I liked the look of it.
And Daughters of Cain is a very strong army. It just didn't really match your play style.
I couldn't master it.
It couldn't master it. So after playing them, I said, Tracy, I think this is the army for you. And that's one thing I hope this series will help, is people think about play styles and go beyond things like looks and other things. If you're going to play an army all the time, you got to end up having fun with playing them.
Right.
So with that, let's talk about the Flesh Eater Courts in a little bit more detail.
Okay.
Models.
Come on. These are cool models. Now, I will tell you that I was a little turned off by the book. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't carry the book around. I don't take it to school. I don't take it a lot of places because it's ugly. It's like, ripping and tearing flesh and blood everywhere and guts everywhere. But what I did was, what we did, Steve came up with actually, we went with a little less of the gore in our color scheme and more of
the rot.
the ghouly kind of look. Yeah, so we went with that. And actually, once we started putting our models together, our army together on the table, I actually really like the way that they look. I removed the gore part of it, but you could keep it if that's your style, by all means. And that made it work for me in terms of aesthetics.
It does. Costs. We've been talking about every time we talk about things like for a new player, what does it cost to get into the army? For the most part, I don't think it's overly expensive, unless you do end up wanting to have like 5 Terrorgeist and zombie dragons, so that can get expensive. But if you stay within control of that, then the costs aren't ridiculous.
No, I don't think so.
I think you can end up, like a lot of armies, spending money in a lot of places you don't end up using.
Yes, because
That's
there's
why we
a lot
have
of
5.
different. Yeah, there are a lot of different builds. So again, with new players, and we're only saying this because it's the mistake we've made over and over and over again. In that, if you don't decide what your army's going to look like ahead of time and then buy for that list, you're going to end up with
spending a lot of money.
Things that you're not going to necessarily use.
Painting. This is a very good army for painters to start with. Now, it took me a long time to start, because when I was going to play them, because I couldn't find the proper tone of color that I wanted on them, and it took me a long time. Yeah. I ended up finding a green that was I thinned it out and used that and made some separate bottles for it, and we've used that for everything else, and it really has come across well.
Which we really like, yeah.
Now that's the ghouls. Now you've painted all the big stuff, and you still think they're very fun and easy to paint?
I do. I really like them. Yeah, I don't think they're... I will tell you, assembly on this guy is tough. This is the Terrorgeist, or you can make him as a zombie dragon. Because of the way his hands are placed, and you have to put the rocks on the base and then make it fit the model. And then there's also a little bit of difficulty in the back getting it together just right. I personally think assembly, this was probably one of the most difficult assemblies.
It's the first time it's been brought up the entire series is the actual difficulty of the modeling aspect of it. And the modeling aspect of those can be a little bit more difficult for a new player.
A little challenging. So if you're new and you're putting it together for the first time, don't get overly frustrated. Take a deep breath. It is a tough model to put together.
And not all the models in the entire Warhammer series are going to be like that.
Just
Many
this
of them are very easy.
Yeah.
Now, speed.
Oh, they're fast.
Oh, they're fast.
They are very fast.
Yes, they're very fast.
You're going to get good table control.
Very good table control in multiple different ways, whether it's coming in off the side of the board, summoning things in off the side of the board, or just their movement alone.
They're fast. I mean, there's 14 inches, and then you have ways that you can add inches to it.
Your crypt flares are very fast.
Yes.
Magic, they're not a magic heavy army, but a good buff magic. Do you agree with that?
I agree. Yes, you're not going to take them because you want to be doing spell after spell after spell, but they do have some really good buffs.
Shooting. All right, enough said. Let's move on. It's another one of the ones that your zombie dragon and Terrorgeist have some short range, potentially powerful shots.
Right.
They can scream, but other than that, no, it's not.
You have shooting, but it's not going to really dictate anything on the board.
Killing.
I love to destroy things. I do.
The main reason they're so killy is a sheer volume of dice.
I tend to lean towards I want the big models. But with this army, these little guys in mass...
How many attacks can you end up getting on that? 5, 6, 7?
Well, 7. You could actually get 7 because they come with 2, and then if they have more than a certain number, you get an extra one, which is 3.
And then the spell buffs that they add on.
And then the spell, you can get D3 more, so you could get 6 per.
And then the other guy can add the spell on top of it, with it. You can get up to 7.
7 attacks, and then you have 40 of them, or 60 of them in a group.
You're bringing a bucket of dice, and you're rolling it. Just the sheer volume of dice. It is amazingly scary to be up against.
Yeah.
And then, of course, these guys
then
are
you got the big guys who really are dangerous on the table. And then, honestly, even the mid-range guys, these guys hit hard. Yeah. So, yeah, it's got a great range for killing.
Yes, it does. Tanky? Oh, my gosh. You can just summon those ghouls back right and left. Now, this current build is tanky. One of the reasons why I was telling her early on she's probably going to want to go with a ghoul build was that the ghoul build is so tanky.
Yeah.
In its ability, you put sippy cup or whatever else they call it, the chalice out there, and it summons them back. But Tracy wanted the big things, and the gristle gore with the battle lines, and that's why we have 5 of those things. And started playing with them, and they can still get shot down, and they can get killed.
Yeah.
And so eventually started trying with the masked ghouls that can be summoned back, and I think she's converted.
I like the mix. The mix of them. I do like the large units of ghouls, but I don't know that I'll ever not go with a couple Terrorgeists in there.
Now that I want to mention travel again. We have a buddy Tom that he took a unit of 2,000 ghouls.
2,000 points.
2,000 points. It was all ghouls, and he put them in a Tupperware container and put them in his backpack, and that was his army for traveling.
Yeah.
So they can be potentially
easy to travel with,
easiest travel with,
or difficult. If you're going to take these big Terrorgeists, the wings and things, they're very fragile. So you're going to have to give them some space.
I do a lot of magneting of models, and I might do another video that is how to put magnets on models. I really wish I would have magnetized those wings and made them a lot easier to travel with.
Yeah.
He's actually going to be included on it, though, showing how you magnet these guys to be able to take them on and off and have it as a hero version or a non-hero
version. Yeah.
So they are fast, have some magic, bad shooting, they're killing, they're tanky, flexibility.
Well, one, they have a lot of different ways you can play them and different ways you can organize the units together. Many of them are very viable.
Then, based on the fact of being able to bring things on the other side of the board and stuff like that, that's the reason I was interested in them, is they're a highly flexible.
Yeah, bringing them back after they die, that's my favorite part.
Yes.
And I'm actually a little bit addicted to that, and I think I'm gonna really have a hard time if I ever try to play something else and all of a sudden something dies and it's dead, and I'm like, oh, I can't bring that back?
Yes, yes. When we went over Chaos, that was the discussion about Slanesh. If you start with that, you're 16-year-old driving a Lamborghini, and then you grow up and you're driving an Accord, you know, and it just seems like, oh my gosh, what am I? It could be the same thing with you. You go beyond these guys, and you go to play like us normal people, and
I am a little addicted to the whole bring back thing, I'm not gonna lie.
So from that, competitiveness, they are, in my opinion, they're that shy of being in the elite group. They were in the elite group, and in the hands of a top player, they could win major tournaments.
Yes, they certainly could be.
But right now, there are 3 or 4 groups of armies that are just in a league of their own, and Flesh Eater Courts are right there.
Yeah.
And it's a reason why. Would you recommend them to new players?
I absolutely would recommend them for new players, because you're gonna kind of get a little of everything, and you're gonna be able to try out a lot of different things. The only reason I would hesitate is because you're gonna want to try all the different builds, so you're gonna end up buying all the different models. But I think this is by far one of my favorite armies.
There's a limited different type of models.
You are right. The battletome is not a huge
Battletome's not, and I think that's actually a positive for new players. You're not going to invest money in something and then it just totally be a waste.
I will say one of the negatives to buying this army is that you have to make your leaders out of your box set, which means that you're going to be buying more models because of that.
So I'm going to make a strong statement. I am finding it hard pressed to think of an army I would more highly recommend for a new player.
Yeah.
I think it's a great army to start with.
When you play them, you hit hard, you stay on the table, you have some flexibility. You know, as long as you paint them the way that, you know, aesthetically you like them, they're good.
I think the point you brought up about getting addicted to being able to bring them all back, and that contaminating your ability to enjoy other armies might be the biggest weakness.
Yeah.
But other than that, they're strong. You show up to a local game store, you'll get some other Flesh Eater Courts, not to the level that you might get with a couple other armies. So I think people will still want to play them. And you can easily decide, you have a Crypt Flare build instead of another build that you like playing, isn't as strong, you still have fun with. That's an accessible army for other people to play against. I am big thumbs up on Flesh Eater Courts.
This army.
Huge thumbs up.
Nighthaunt.
Nighthaunt. We're going to cover Nighthaunt before we cover Legions and Nagash, because ever since the Nighthaunt tome came out, you can add some of the Nighthaunt units into Legions and Nagash, so we'll cover the Nighthaunt first. Good models. So Lady, what?
Olinder.
It's not Oleander?
Oleander. No,
like
Olinder.
It's a gorgeous model. Tracy did a great job of putting her up on a pedestal. They've got some amazing, amazing models.
Kurdos.
Cost for this army, I actually think, is on the cheap side compared to what you need to buy for this
I
army.
agree.
You could waste money once again on some models you never use, but I think that there's the cheap side. Painting,
Okay, this has got to be the easiest army to paint.
Sylvaneth and this.
Yeah.
Sylvaneth and this.
Yeah.
Put some contrast on this. I actually think Sylvaneth's a little easier because you want to do a little bit of blending to get the colors. Sylvaneth, you can just, you don't have to.
fairly,
You don't have to.
yeah.
But it's close. Travel would
Fairly
be
easy. Yep.
You don't even have a whole lot of bigs. You
No.
might have the black coach, but other than that, a lot of smalls. Travel should be easy. So let's talk about gameplay. Speed. Well, any army that everybody can fly
So they get to avoid all the terrain.
Absolutely.
And just go straight.
helps with the speed tremendously.
Yeah.
They can get around the board.
Yeah.
They have a pretty good movement as it is, but the fact of everything being able to fly is a huge benefit to getting things around the board.
Yeah.
So that's a huge plus. Magic, some of it's good.
Yeah.
Some of it's good.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say they're a magic heavy army.
No, but let's even throw some of the abilities into magic that you'd use during the hero phase. Lady O's got some pretty good stuff going on.
She does.
She does have some pretty good stuff. She got
does.
some good spells also.
Yeah.
And magic's a pretty good support. Shooting, just another laugh at this one. That's really...
They are definitely not shooty heavy.
I'm trying to think of
not
anybody who's less shooty than them. And it's hard pressed to see who's less shooty than them.
Yeah. It's not only that they don't have shooty that would make you as the opponent change your play, they just don't have any.
That's the fastest phase in the game, is a Nighthaunt shooty phase. Even Khorne, the Bloodthirsters and stuff, can come in and do some stuff.
Something, yeah.
And I could put a Skull Cannon in there or something like that. Killy, tanky, I want to talk about that in context of also competitiveness.
Okay.
From the aspect of, you read this book, the Battletome. Almost everything has a 4+ save.
Yeah.
Almost everything ignores rend.
Oh, I think the whole army, doesn't it?
But let's just say that I've only played them a couple times and played against Nighthaunt itself maybe once.
Okay.
No, I played a couple times. So you think from that right away, the tankiness would be great. Killy. Chain Rasps, they had a lot of attacks that they can come in with.
They do, yeah.
There's a lot of attacks there. The Black Coach can do a lot of damage. There's a lot of things that can happen. You read this book, and there are going to be a lot of units. You might look at the stats and say, oh, that's going to do outright damage. And then you play them. Oh my gosh. Here's the point, folks. We sat down and talked about this today.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it.
We don't know why this book doesn't work. I am not knocking on GW about this book. Reading this book, I think everybody right away went, oh, that's going to be a good army.
Yeah.
That is going to be a good army.
For having your units not taking any rend, that should mean that they're on the table the whole game.
And a lot of the individual abilities some of their heroes have, and a lot of stuff they can do, it just should work. It doesn't.
Competitively, Nighthaunt is, didn't we say where KO used to be?
That's my opinion right now.
Okay.
Is that Nighthaunt is where KO used to be in perceptions. I've twice faced them in a tournament, and once again with armies I didn't think were the most powerful things on earth, and it was just never a sweat, and never really felt threatened by it. I don't know why.
Right. And they do seem like they should do well. And I know they are attractive to new players. Since I have a club at school, it's one of the armies that's almost always chosen. But it's always one of the first armies that somebody says, hey, can I try a different army? So it just really doesn't hold the way you would think. If you love the look of them and you really want to play them, that's great. But you may get frustrated as a new player.
Based upon the age of the Battletome, I don't see that being updated at any point in time, unless maybe they were to do a Legions of Nagash new battletome, that kind of like they did with the Orc War Clans, and they took the Iron Jaws and the Bone Splitters and they put it all together.
Yeah,
I could see if they did some Nagash thing that put them all together. I could see that all being together, and maybe those models end up becoming something that you can put on the table and have a fun game with. I just have seen some people that just get wiped with them, and I don't know why. I cannot tell you why. So I wanted to stop us necessarily analyzing all the play styles, because individually we might say, looks good, and then you put it all together and it just doesn't seem to work.
So it's just a caution that if you are a new player and you're choosing an army, if you are really drawn to the Nighthaunt, you have to be realistic in your expectations of what you're going to get out of them.
I think if somebody's taking Lady O now, they're using that new Legion that they put out in the other book under Legions of Nagash and the Legion of Grief, I think that is.
Yes.
The Legion of Grief, and they're finding ways to use these models in some other builds.
Right.
Because the Nighthaunt itself is just not working. So I hate to say it, but I'm not recommending new players start with Nighthaunt, because I don't want a new player to invest the money, the time, paint, and then after 5 or 6 games say, I'm done with this.
I'm not going to play anymore.
When there are other options, I would rather have you play Fleshier Courts and get spoiled about them early on than play Nighthaunt right now as a new player, inexperienced player, and just get pushed off the tabletop.
Yeah.
And nobody will be able to really tell you why.
Right. Now, if you're having a lot of success with Nighthaunt and you would like to comment about that, but please be realistic. Are you really making your army strong? Is it strong, or is it just as strong as it can be based on the book?
During the Cities of Sigmar segment in the first video, I said, if you disagree with me about advising Cities of Sigmar, new players to play Cities of Sigmar, which I didn't because I thought it was very convoluted for them to grasp, what I said to him was, if you're doing it well, it's not a statement on Cities of Sigmar, it's a statement on you. In other words, that you're a very good player. I think that if you're playing Nighthaunt very well right now and you're being competitive, it's not about Nighthaunt. It's about you're a good player. And
who's maximizing the things that it can do.
Really maximizing what it can do. And I don't necessarily think that's going to transfer over to new players who are coming into this army for the first time.
Right. I think that's a good way to say it, yes.
So I would not advise new players to play this.
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Legions of Nagash. Legions of Nagash, Legion of Grief, Grand Host of Nagash, Legion of Blood, Legion of Sacrament.
Legion of Grief.
I said that one already.
Oh.
But there is another one I am forgetting.
I just wanted to participate.
But that's all right. We'll come back to that in a minute. But first, let's talk about the other things.
Okay.
Cost. New players, I'm going to give you a heads up and save you some money if you are interested in Legions of Nagash right away. I don't usually like to show unpainted models that just have base on them, but how long has Nagash been sitting on my airbrush booth in there?
Couple Christmases ago.
A couple Christmases. And the reason why is because we got him, want to play him, and he's 880 points. And just cannot find a way to realistically get him into a build. I do know some people are using him on a new Ossiarch Bonereapers build that he can be very powerful, but that 880 points in this Nagash build, I just don't see it working without playing it elsewhere. Now, somebody might be making it work, but if you're a new player and you see Legions of Nagash, don't go out and buy Nagash right away. Give it a try with other builds first, and then see if you want to buy it. Because Nagash Light, Archon the Black,
Nagash Light,
actually has some really good spell casting and some things he can do, and you do see him in just about.
He is typically the anchor.
He's typically the anchor of it.
In that army.
It's a big battle tome.
Yep.
So if you really pay attention to what you want to build, and you start with a whole bunch of skellies as your basic foundation, this can actually be a very accessible entry point for new players cost-wise. Some of the start collecting boxes have stuff you can use. Some do, some don't. But Flesh Eater Courts, you can use everything that's in those start collecting
Right, absolutely.
boxes because there's only a couple models in Flesh Eater Court. But I think it's a good cost entry point.
Yeah, I don't see any reason that you wouldn't go into it because of cost.
Yeah, painting?
Well, skellies don't get very much easier than skellies. I honestly think it's a fairly easy army to paint.
I did Arkin with his before contrast, so there was some washes over white for the skulls and things like that. But if you follow along videos online and how to do this, you can actually really easily get something like this done that looks tremendous on the tabletop and isn't that difficult to do.
Right.
Doesn't have all the skin layering of flesh and all that type of stuff. It really doesn't.
And a lot of it's that ethereal kind of look.
Absolutely, which once you really get that down, is easy as can be. Another cost-saving point is sometimes I'm going to do a video once again on how I magnetize things to save money. Simply took him off. All the different Mortarchs have their own saddles, so you can actually make each of the Mortarchs, have him separate, and then just simply attach him with a magnet. But guess what?
Now.
Have we done that?
No, we haven't even made the other two because, and we'll get into flexibility, but there's really one realistic build here.
Hero-wise.
Main hero, and that is your Anchor Archon.
Of those, you're going with Archon. There's Archon the Black. Of those, of the Mortarchs, you're going with Archon the Black. And then that limits with Legion. So you have this big book with all these different flexible options, and nobody seems to use them.
Right.
And that's where I think the book is a bit outdated.
Oh, the book is definitely outdated.
And that's when I brought up Legion of Grief, Legion of this, Legion of that. And then you end up playing either Grand Host or Legion of
Sacrament.
That Vince plays. And that's why I really do hope GW updates this battletome and brings this up to the modern meta. Because I think the meta's passed this up a little bit. That doesn't mean don't go into it. We'll talk about playstyle and everything else and competitiveness. Yeah. It travels pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of skellies and not a whole lot of bigs. And the one bigs you do, no, nothing worse than any other army we've played against. Another thing that you need to know about money, though, with this is that some of the models that you might want to put into your army were brought out in a later battletome, which is the Nighthaunt battletome. So you don't have to get the battletome because they're war scrolls and everything would be in his ear, in the app in his ear. But if you're somebody who likes to play with the cards, you might have to get the war scroll cards for the Nighthaunt.
Yes.
Because, yes, there's some things such as the chain rasps that were put into the army that are a good option that are not originally in the Legions of Nagash battletome, which is one reason why I think those tomes should just be combined into one new modernized tome eventually. Let's go on to playstyle. Speed.
Nah.
For the most part, no.
Average to a little below average.
You add chain rasps in, as we said in the Nighthaunt, that can fly and move. You can get some more flexibility with speed. You can add a Terrorgeist in or a zombie dragon, which can move. And that provides some muscle and that can provide some speed. But it's not their strength.
Nah.
Very moderate with their speed. Magic, absolutely.
Yes, I would call this a magic heavy army.
The three magic heavy armies that I can think of right now: Tzeentch, Seraphim, Legions of Nagash.
Yes. Your heroes not only have great spells, but they can cast several of them in each hero phase.
With positives to the dice rolls.
Yes, so plus
Built
2
into
to the
their
roll,
tables.
plus 3 to the roll.
And it makes it that even Nagash casting Arcane Bolt has a much likely chance of doing the multiple damage
D3,
versus the D3 versus the 1.
Yeah.
That absolutely can happen with him.
And it's really hard to dispel.
Because you have the positives.
Right, because of the positives.
So they can be very magic heavy, and they can be frustrating for other magic armies that want to cast, and then they have positives to dispel.
To
against
dispelling,
them.
yes.
Lord Croak and the Lord of Change can make ways to negate that, but for other armies it can be frustrating. And both Nagash and Archon have an individual spell, Curse of Years and Hand of Dust, that are scary as can be.
Absolutely.
Hand of Dust being able to touch you, and then you get a 50-50 chance of having your model removed from the tabletop.
Yeah, it's not even going to take damage. It's just gone.
Slain. Any model. I saw in one of the early battle reports, I saw he just went up to a Maw Crusher and just went, boop,
Yes. Yes.
Maw Crusher out. Remember we watched that?
Yes.
And I was like, that's not fun.
Yeah.
That's not fun. It's so powerful that last year in a tournament, I think it was CanCon, a guy in turn 1 got a changeling near him and used his Hand of Dust to Hand of Dust Nagash, and it became an internet sensation that everybody was talking about.
Yes.
Nagash got Nagashed. It's scary, but we all kind of love that it's in the game too.
Yes, but it's not worth 880
It's not
points.
worth 880 points. When Curse of Years from Archon can just...
That is a scary spell.
It can end up taking people off the tabletop also.
Yeah.
So very magic heavy. Killing. You can end up having zombie dragons or terrorgeist in there that can do damage. Morghast can do damage.
Yeah, they're actually pretty
good. And skellies can roll a whole lot of dice, which once again, dice equals damage.
Right.
Not once again, I think it's the first time I've ever actually said that.
Actually, and it's pretty good. I like
Make a
it.
shirt, dice equals damage. I like that. That's a new saying we've made.
Yeah.
+1 for the leader and dice equals damage.
Yeah, I want a t-shirt that says that +1 for the leader, by the way. If anybody ever sees that, you can send me the link. That'd be great.
But yes, they can be very killing. Tanky?
To the point of frustration.
For those of you who are playing against them, this is what you want to do. You want to take a squad of 40 skeletons and you want to bring it down to 1 or 2.
And then walk away.
And walk away.
Just leave them there.
For those of you who've played against Necrons in 40k, it's the exact opposite. In Necrons, you want to kill the whole unit because then they can't bring them back. In this, you don't want to kill the whole unit because if you leave 1 or 2, I might get a D3 from a gravestone come back and a D3 from this hero and a D3 from that hero. If you kill the last one, the leader spends a command point, and the entire unit of 40
unit is back. I will tell you that I have seen people throw dice against Vince because they got so angry when he brought back a unit of 40 skellies after they had just spent like 2 or 3 turns trying to kill them all.
Yep. There's not too many people who can be more tanky at holding an objective than 40 skellies.
Yeah, once they get on there,
just
just move on to another objective.
And the fact that they're holding the objective with 40, we played a game Sylvaneth versus Skellies, and the Skellies could not kill the Kurnoth Hunters.
Right.
But you had
just
3
outnumber 'em.
versus 40, you're going to take the objective.
Yeah.
So they're very tanky. Flexibility. I think there's some flexibility in builds. There could be. There traditionally isn't.
Too many because you have these different spread out versions.
And when it comes to the tabletop, I personally don't think they're flexible from the fact of if you're playing Legions of Nagash and you're on the other side of the table, I'm kind of able to predict what you're going to do.
Okay, so the only caveat I have to that is the grave sites. Because you put grave sites out, you can a little bit control the fact that either your opponent is going to have to block that grave site from you, or you're going to be able to bring back models from that grave site.
I don't necessarily think that's flexibility on your side. I think that modifies the other side a little bit. So once I put them out, I'm not then necessarily that flexible in modifying my game during the middle of the game.
True.
I might be if 40 skellies drop and I can bring those 40 skellies back on another gravesite. That's about the limit of it. But other than that, I still think there's a level of very straightforward. Once again, straightforward does not mean bad.
Right. No.
Their straightforward can be very powerful. But if you're somebody who likes the option to have that flexibility, to make modifications
change mid-game, your direction.
I don't necessarily know if this army provides that.
True.
That doesn't necessarily, that's not a knock on them, it's a style thing, it's not a competitiveness thing.
Right.
Because there's some very flexible armies
that's something that
aren't that competitive.
That's one thing, though, that makes it nice for newer players.
It can be.
Because then you don't necessarily have to be worrying about how can I change this or what could I bring in here or...
But the grass is always greener. So you're playing against somebody else that, even my Sylvaneth, and I'm going, oh, I'm playing Dreadwood. I'm just going to pop those 9 scythe guys on the other side of the table, or I'm going to do this on the other side, or I'm going to do that. And you're sitting there going, why can't I do that? If a new player going into it knows it's not necessarily my play style.
And I guess that's
not what my army offers.
That's more than I want to take on during a game.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Say that's not why you would take tankiness, some magic spell casting. There's a lot of reasons to take it. That wouldn't be a rotation.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Competitiveness, in the past, Grand Host Nagash was always near the top of the tournament ranking. Domination would be too strong of a word. They were always there, and they've not been recently. I don't necessarily know if it's creep, because you can't just blame everything on creep.
But you have to say that because they're an older battletome, they don't have some of the current bells and whistles that some of the newer armies have. Thereby, they can't defend against them, or
simple things such as there's no War Scroll battalions that you're going to take in it. So you're not taking an extra artifact, and then you get the book.
Or the extra command point.
Or the extra command point,
Yeah.
which then you have now books now that offer you more things to do with command points.
And more ways to get command points.
More ways to get command points.
Which they're left out of.
Then you have books that give you all the different artifacts for the different realms, and you don't even have an extra one to pick because you're not picking a battalion. There's
True.
these small things the game has changed in that has passed Grandos Nagash up.
I agree.
And that's where I think that Grandos Nagash is going to need an update. I would personally want the update to combine Nighthaunt and Grandos Nagash together, because they're all underneath it. That would kind of be my...
And that might bring the Nighthaunt up a little bit in its viability.
So not saying don't play it, just don't have a really, really high expectation that it's just going to go in a tournament and dominate. And I do think you're right. A lot of people have played them over and over and over again and have figured them out.
I think that is part of it. But I do want to say that because Nagash is such a staple to the game, it would not surprise me if they didn't get a new book.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm saying it might be worth getting into, based on the fact that you might have up and coming advancements, and then you would already have your army.
Tomb King players are going to disagree with me. And Tomb King players, for those people new to the game, Tomb Kings was a very popular undead army in the old world that has not come over into this Age of Sigmar world, and has pretty much been told it's not going to. And the models are almost irrelevant for the game now.
Yeah.
So it's people who invested in an army and is gone. They're going to disagree with what I'm going to say next. I don't think you'll ever find yourself buying a bunch of skellies and not being able to use them.
And they become irrelevant.
In this game. They will always be relevant. So I still think it's a good place to start.
I do.
I want to explain creep for a minute for new players. I use that term.
That's true.
And I think there's always this argument people make that new armies come out, and new armies come out stronger than the other armies, and they come out stronger so that they can sell new models. I do think that creep is there, but not for that reason, and I don't think it's always there. So I don't think it's there by design. Tzeentch came out, definitely was like that. But Sylvaneth came out with a brand new book, and definitely didn't just jump up into the creep.
And I don't think Gloomspite did.
Gloomspite, before that came out with a new book, and there was no creep to that whatsoever.
Right. I actually think that there were a lot of things that were taken away, not taken away because there was an existing one, but I think there's things that they didn't take advantage of that they should have.
Fire Slayers definitely came out with a stronger book.
Nice, yep.
But the stronger book was needed. Everybody realized that. KO came out with a stronger book, but those books aren't stronger than your Flesh Eater Courts or models, books that were already there. So I do hope a new book comes out. I do hope it's not like overly powered like some of the people might think about. But I do think it's still a place that new players can start.
I would still give it a thumbs up to start.
I absolutely. Vince loves it. Our last death army, Ossiarch Bonereapers. We had a full Ossiarch Bonereaper army. I really thought that Vince loving the skeletons and kind of losing some interest in playing Grandos Nagash. Vince still loves to play Grandos Nagash, but tournament-wise, he wasn't winning that.
Again, because they're straightforward and people had figured them out.
People figured them out. So I thought the Ossiarch Bonereapers might be something he might be into with the skeletons. He personally hated the look.
Yeah,
the
he
smiley
did not
skeletons hated them. Had zero interest in playing them. The only person in the family who had interest in playing them was George, and because George is like me, and George's like, you have enough armies and enough good ones. So they sat there, so I sold them. So we have very limited knowledge of them.
Yes.
We've got a friend that is a very good tournament player, organizes tournament players, who won a tournament we went to with him, and had some conversations with him. So our knowledge on this is going to be very limited.
Right.
They are very competitive.
Right now, they are doing very well.
They are in that elite group. I can't put them at the top of the elite group. They're at the bottom of the elite group
because you still have to be a really good player.
You still have to be a really good player, but even if you took all the top players playing right now, this is what I was told. I was told this by some players who are good players and involved. And one of them is our friend who went to the LVO and finished 8th in the LVO.
Okay.
He said, they're so good against so many armies. So amazingly good against so many armies. And then the rock, paper, scissors game comes. And they hit an army that just exploits.
All of their weaknesses.
I wouldn't even say exploits a weakness, negates
their strengths.
their main strengths.
Okay.
So they get to that point where in a 5-game tournament, the higher and higher they get, they're going to meet somebody who has that weakness, and they're going to lose. And they're going to be a lot of 4-1s in third or fourth. We go to a small tournament we went to, he didn't face that.
Yeah.
You go to the big tournament. So they are, and this whole video we're doing isn't about competitive play, it's about new players, and I want to see how I'm going to tie this in with that. This is an army. We can talk about cost, paints, all that type of stuff. I guess, what can we talk about that we know? Painting, they'll be easy to paint.
Should be.
Should be easy. Cost, I don't really know.
Right.
Travel, I would think it's fine because there are a lot of small models. I can't even say we can talk about playstyle. We don't know a whole lot of the playstyle to talk about. But from what I've gotten, this would be a very good army for people to get into that will have a very strong army and is still a very straightforward way to play, with one exception.
Yes, because they do their command abilities different than any other
Command
army.
points and abilities.
Right. So they don't get command points in the regular traditional method. They have a different point system, and each unit has different abilities that they can do based on this point system. So I think there's a little bit of, I don't know, bookkeeping is the right word, but there's a lot more to keep track of for a new person than would be normal.
I would recommend this as somebody's second army.
I can see that.
The first army, I still would recommend you get a first army that really nice flows the system of the game consistently with all the other armies. Follows the phases, battalions, command points, command abilities, everything the same with everybody else. Unless you're just a really experienced tabletop gamer
player
in other games. And then you can move to beyond the novice stage into the seasoned stage. A core mechanic of this army is so different from all the other armies. I don't know if it's the best place to start.
And I don't know that you are going to necessarily be able to get help from your opponent, or if you're new and you're sitting across the table from somebody and you're like, how does that work again? They're not going to be able to help you.
You have somebody brand new with Ossiarch Bonereapers come to our game store, not even a tournament, come to our game store, says, I don't know how all this works. I'm going to look at them and say, I don't have any clue how it works either.
Yeah, because
it's so
different.
unique for them that I don't necessarily know if it's the first place to jump into. And I don't want people to start being confused about it and not maximizing
and get frustrated.
And get frustrated.
Yeah.
And then saying, the game's not as much fun.
Yeah.
If it weren't for that, all the other things, their tankiness, their ability to kill, all the other stuff, I think it would be a great place to start.
Yeah.
I just would recommend it being somebody's second army, not their first.
Not the first.
So and
you have to learn how to play the game first before you can learn how to play that particular army to its maximum.
And it is an army that in the rock, paper, scissors, when it brings a rock and you're a scissors, it smashes you to pulp and you might not have any chance. But there are some papers that just...
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Nullify the rock. Nullify the rock. Ossiarch Bonereapers, once again, we don't know enough to give a big, strong recommendation either way.
Just a caution.
But what we do know is, wouldn't recommend it as your first army. If you're interested, maybe make it your second. And if that means you're going to borrow somebody else's army and play 10 games to get to know the game beforehand, then maybe that's a solution to get around it. Thank you very much. That is the end of our third video in this series, Death. We have Destruction left to come.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
No, they're not. I am Steve.
And I'm Tracy.
And we are
The Partners at War. Oh, keep playing.